Hello and welcome back to St. Thomas Aquinas for everyone. My name is Dave Palmer and we are going over the attributes of God, and there are 7 of them. As I have told you a few times, we have done 4 of them so far, and just as a way of review, do you remember the 4 that we've done so far? The first one was that God is simple, okay? And it was very complicated to explain God's simplicity, which is kind of ironic. And then the second attribute of God was that he is perfect, okay, God's perfection. And then if you remember, instead of going straight into the third attribute, Thomas paused because I think he wanted to make a point of saying that let's talk about goodness in general first, because the goodness of all the things that we experience in the world is related to God. Okay, so before going into God's goodness, that's one of the attributes of God, is that God is good. Thomas said, let's talk about goodness in general first. Okay, again, very, very much trying to make the connection between the natural world and the God who created it, the uncaused cause, the unmoved mover. Remember all those proofs for the existence of God. Okay, and then we went into the fourth attribute, which was that God is infinite. And I got to admit, that one was kind of complicated. That was the last one we did. And so you're saying, okay, let's go into attribute number 5, but you got to kind of tap the brakes again, because Thomas again is going to not go straight into the next attribute, but he's going to spend one question in the Summa talking not about the next attribute, but I think he's tapping the brakes a little bit because he thinks maybe we're making too much of a connection between the created world and God, because that's pantheism. If we say the created world is God, okay, that beautiful flower is God, or that beautiful dog or child, okay? So I think that's what Thomas is getting at here. So he is going to go into now, in question number 8, the existence of God in things, all right? He's concerned, what is the relationship between the natural world, the things that we enjoy, all these wonderful good things, and God himself, okay? So that's how he's going to spend question number 8. By way of review, I want to go back to some of the other attributes of God that we went over. And remember, when I was talking about God's perfection, we talked about all these things in the world that we see as having some degree of perfection. The perfect dog, the perfect boyfriend or girlfriend, or banana split. Okay, you remember that, don't you? If you have not yet seen that video, go back and watch that one first, because you really can't kind of jump into the Summa in question number 8, you really need to have the first 7 questions. I also talked about goodness in general, as I mentioned. That was before the 4th attribute of God, cats and tulips and pizzas and butterflies. Okay, all these things are good and they're related to God, but they're not God. Okay, and that's what Thomas, I think, is trying to warn us against before going on to the next attribute. Also, God's infinity. I used the earthworm and the grasshopper and the flower to compare these. So let's move on now, and Thomas asks in part 1, question 8, article 1, whether God is in all things. Okay, his answer is interesting. He says, God is in all things, not indeed as part of their essence, nor as an accident, but as an agent is present to that upon which it works. Okay, isn't that interesting? That an agent is present upon that upon which it works. For an agent must be joined to that wherein it acts immediately and touch it by its power. Hence, it is proved in Physics 7, that's Aristotle, that the thing moved and the mover must be joined together, okay, somehow, some way. Let me give you a real life example that I know you've experienced. Let's say you're walking outside and you look up in the sky and you see this, okay, you see a kite. What are you naturally going to do? Isn't your mind and your eyes going to follow it down, see the little string, and see who's controlling this kite? Okay, it's just a natural instinct. We want to know that kite isn't just up there on its own. Somebody is down below with the string, and they're controlling it, right? So it's kind of similar. Another example, maybe you've seen a drone before up in the sky, and you see a drone, and you know that somewhere, somehow, somebody is down below, and they've got the remote control, or maybe it's more sophisticated, they're in a building or something like that, looking at a video screen, but somebody's controlling that drone. So when we see the natural world, we got to kind of think the same thing, that isn't something is behind it. There's something that brought it into being, holding it into being, okay? And that's what Thomas is getting at here, and that is God, all right? Now, Thomas goes on in article number 2 to say, is God everywhere? All right, we know that God is everywhere, but he's trying to say, okay, if God is infinite and he's everywhere, what does that mean exactly? He is in every place as giving it existence and locative power, okay, movement, all right? Something can only move because God allows it to. Again, things placed are in place, inasmuch as they fill place, and God fills every place, not indeed like a body, for a body is said to fill place inasmuch as it excludes the co-presence of another body, okay? So if you see this flower there, okay, that's taking space. And if another flower wanted the exact same space, it can't because it's taking up that particular space. Well, God isn't that way. He doesn't, because the flower's there, it doesn't mean God can't be present as the agent that brought it into being, because as soon as God were to will that that flower not exist, well, the flower would disappear. Whereas by God being a place, others are not thereby excluded from it. Indeed, by the very fact that he gives being to the things that fill every place, he himself fills every place, but not materially, not physically. Remember, that was the kind of the backbone of God's simplicity, is that he doesn't have a body, he doesn't have matter and form. It's totally different. Okay, God is so above our nature that it's even hard to describe him, and that's why Thomas mainly is just saying things that he's not. All right, he doesn't have matter. Okay, and he doesn't. He's not finite. He's infinite. Okay, so I know these are kind of challenging, but it's good for us to go over these attributes. And now that we've gone through question number 8, question number 9 is going to be the next attribute of God. Okay, we've gone through many of them already, and we've got a few more remaining. I think 3 more remaining. We've done 4, and now 5, 6, and 7 are still to come. So come back for the next video, and we'll continue on with the attributes of God. Thank you so much for watching. Comment below, ask your questions. Let's get some dialogue going about the Summa, and let me know if it makes sense to you, or if there's any areas of it that maybe could have been explained a little bit better. I appreciate any comments that you might want to make. All right, we are journeying through the Summa. This is St. Thomas Aquinas for everyone. Thanks for watching. My name is Dave Palmer. God bless you.